Hello and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. I'm Robin Panacchia, and with me, as always, is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm well, thank you, Robin, and yourself.
I am peachy, and I will be peachier if you guys click like and share and subscribe and all that other good stuff.
Yes, we have loads of very important and serious political stuff to discuss, but also I did want to acknowledge the 20th anniversary
A very yes,
of
a
Wicked.
very yes, I would say a very very important thing in everyone's lives. I think.
Yeah, it's and still running, so quite impressive. And I was actually watching one of the clips for when it returned after the pandemic. So everyone, of
Hmm.
course, there's a big of applause, especially for the opening line from Glinda, given that it was the first time back after so long. So everyone was very glad to see her. Um, I love great openings to things. I especially in musicals. But Kristen Chenoweth is a favorite of mine, as is Adina Menzel. Many great women have gone on to play these parts,
But
either in
they're
series or
obviously
whatever.
like the OGs.
Yes, but they are specifically just sort of have defined these roles. I'm more mature than I was when I made the Chicago movie, and I was like, oh my god, this is not BB and Ann, the people I kind of grown attached to. So I know they're doing a two-part movie. Um, uh,
Which I'm
Chenoweth,
so excited about.
Chenoweth and Menzel have been very gracious about the casting and so forth. But um, I'd like to actually talk about a bit about what Wicked was saying and its impact. I know first off, just as from a commercial insight, somewhat artistic, it has sort of led, kind of created more of a sense of the origin. This person you thought of as a villain is
Mhm.
has a more complicated history. I think we later see with Maleficent and then Cruella. And I'm not going to debate the relative worth of those films. My son really enjoyed Cruella. He adored it.
I still
So
haven't seen it. You'd think I would because of the fashion stuff, but I have not gotten around to that yet, mostly because I'm afraid I won't be able to follow it.
oh, I think you can manage. The plot is not that difficult, but it is.
Oh, actually, look, I have to ask you, like, about comic book stuff first, like, you or our other friend Michael. I'm like, am I going to understand this without knowing, like, 40 years of backstory?
Yeah, I think. So I've said this on Twitter before and other places. There's this YouTube site called CinemaSins, and I think it's one of
Mhm.
the worst things ever, and I think has perhaps promoted a sort of obtuseness,
Mhm.
a cynical obtuseness as a kind of cleverness. And what happens is that it creates this thing of like, oh, well, I don't basic tropes, pretending to not understand basic tropes or storytelling aspects, and then acting as if, oh my God, there's so much homework to understand things. Where for years, people would, having never seen a Bond film, could walk
Mhm.
into a Bond film and get the basics. I mean, people tend to be pretty smart. Most films are I mean, yes, there are bad films out there, but just the fact that there is sort of that they don't actually spoon feed you, that they let you interpret things based
Yeah.
on characterization and how people interact is something that CinemaSins made to be like, oh, what you used to be ashamed to be that dumb to not understand is now sort of seen as being very clever. You've noticed a flaw in a movie because we haven't established that you and I have met before,
Yeah.
that's based on our interaction now. Like you could start this without having to give the whole secret origin of where we met and everything like that. So I think you could follow it. Back to
I will say you probably do have to watch The Wizard of Oz before you watch Wicked. I would imagine. Otherwise, it's
hmm,
not going to make sense. I actually do think The Wizard of Oz was particularly well suited. I think to that sort of flipping because the old trope about Dorothy being the actual villain, who steals like murders someone upon arrival and then steals her shoes, which
yes.
is Not
I think
cool,
it
but
yeah, I
like,
think it spends on that. I'm very big on often very good work does not require the the past things it's feeding off of. I think it helps you
yeah,
give sort of a depth to it, but I think Wicked is very good in that you don't necessarily have to have seen this, though most people have. So it's sort of, I
yeah.
think,
No,
somewhat
that's true.
academic. But and I think also what's great is that this is a story that actually everyone kind of knows, even if they haven't
Mhm,
actually seen The Wizard of Oz, like certain who these characters are, what they're doing riffs on. So I don't think you are surprised by who these characters are, even if you haven't. You say, "Oh yeah, Glinda the Good." I'm aware of that concept and same with that. So I think they've done. Um, it's very good at sort of conveying that and conveying ideas that life is much more complicated than we often see. The role of propaganda that the wizard has. The wizard is
mhm.
a very interesting character because that's been a huge trope of don't look behind the man behind the
Yeah.
curtain and ongoing a sense of politicians who um, use propaganda and exploit women and have no powers of their
Mhm,
own is very interesting. The original featured Joel Grey in that role, which was great because he's such a kind of inherently nice guy. So it works
mhm.
for a character who is pretty sinister, um, but in a recognizably human fashion.
Well, I think I actually really like these stories because I do think it's, just in general very important. I think a lot of the time people, even, smart people like to sort of like for almost safety lean on this idea that people are born evil and they're just completely evil, 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 and that's the big explanation for why they're bad. And I do think like, understanding that, you know, evil isn't born, it's made, and sometimes it's made from like a lot of really horrible things in someone's life, and it's or born from finding out that the wizard is actually a piece of shit, um or like i do I think that that's important because it does like sort of drill in the fact that nuance exists, which I think people often tend to forget. um
Yeah, there were some especially tedious takes on the recent Barbie movie that um felt it was when this was not feminist, even though you know
mhm.
uh, it was produced by, but it was not feminist because Ken was in any way sympathetic, which you know o- overtly bad villains aren't interesting. Also, your motivations need to be interesting. So often, some of the best villains have to sort of be a dull creative writing teacher for a moment, but like it's called sort of positive motivators.
Mhm.
So love is a positive motivator, and wanting to do something out of feeling rejected personally for love or whatever, any of that is some, even Maleficent in Sleeping
Yeah.
Beauty. The idea that people joke that she pitched a fit because she wasn't invited to a party, but that's a recognizable wounding thing, like being
Yeah.
shunned, no one likes. And that's sort of I there was this TV show called Loki, and there was one of the characters, the artificial intelligence known as Miss Minutes. There was very serious uber woke critics who were upset that it turned out that she was motivated by love and was sporn, and it was like, oh, this is all tropes or cliches, why couldn't she just want to rule the world? It's like, well, power
No, I
power
don't
is
think
not
anyone
compelling.
does anyone even like really want to rule the world? Like, I mean, like, I know, like, really, like when you think of it, that doesn't even sound like that good of a time.
No.
Actually, like today I came across like there was a Twitter Spaces or whatever hosted or featuring David. Is it David Icke or David Icke? I don't know, but
Mhm.
the lizard people guy. And is decoding Saturn and the reptilians. I'm not sure why a planet needed to be decoded, but what are you going to do? Um, and it's just like, yeah, these people are, alien beings who like come all the way from this other galaxy just to like rule the planet of Earth. Like, that doesn't even seem that interesting. It is, in fact, a Tears for
Yeah,
Fears song,
we
but I
used
don't think
to.
everyone does. I wouldn't wanna rule the world. I barely wanna rule my own life.
Yeah, it's also power, like power for what end. So love is itself understandable, and I think this sense of I'm not trying to mansplain feminists, but there's some sort of woke, and also it seems to be a sort of wokeism from people who aren't even women or women identifying, who then lecture about love as a motivator for women. Um, is that those motivations aren't bad, and
Mhm,
also if it's a villain, you could actually, so if someone is doing something really terrible for reasons that we think are cliched and awful, that actually could be good because it is a bad person doing it. So the idea that
mhm.
you can't have growth and change or understanding is not necessarily, to me, compelling. And yeah, it is
And
every
most
villain.
people don't consider themselves the villains,
No,
is, like
they feel victimized. So to understand of like, why do these people feel victimized? Why does someone, and it's hard to understand, like someone like
mhm,
the person who runs libs of TikTok or whatever seems overtly horrible, but there is, what I would find fascinating is there is an origin where she feels that she has been abused by other people. It's horrific and it doesn't make any sense probably,
mhm.
but that is so often the motivation of terrible people. Speaking of which, you'd written Saturday about uh, this really terrible story of someone who was outed for no, there was no news value to this or whatever, clearly just to, and I'd written about this with Katie Hill as well, of where
Mhm,
people were, um, her, the revenge porn that people
mhm.
exploited using was solely, it was only for prurient interest. There was no public interest for me to see her nude, just that there are pictures that exist, but the people were using that to hurt her. And similar in this case, can you tell folks about, in case I didn't read the story yesterday, about
Yeah,
this person?
quick recap. Earlier this week, this random right wing Alabama site run by a Breitbart contributor called Jeff Poor um, outed for like literally no reason the mayor of a like 6,000 person town as a cross dresser. Like there was like it wasn't, a situation. He was a pastor, he was a Republican, but it actually doesn't seem like there was like any there was no hypocrisy, like no one's been able to find any videos or like transcripts or articles about him saying shitty things about LGBTQ people. And like yes, he was a Republican, but like let's like yes, we're all very clear on what things are and everything, but I think there are still like a lot of areas where people are just like, well, I'm not going to get elected as a Democrat, I'll just run it, run as a Republican. um or
Mm,
in Rhode Island, it used to be like, I'm going to run as a Republican because no one is running as a Republican, even though I'm not really a Republican. Um, like the field is wide open, but like he doesn't seem like a bad guy. And so they just ran these like horrible articles on this man for no reason. And, just a regular mayor going out, like, trying to help people during tornadoes and shit. And, he had some stuff online where, he wrote erotica and, said he was, dressed up as a woman, said he was considering being transgender, but maybe he wasn't, we don't know. And this guy, you know, seemed to try and muddle through it, but then like, Friday night he went and he blew his brains out on the side of a road in like just in front of the cops in front of everyone. Um and it's just fucking heartbreaking. Like it was heartbreaking that this guy didn't realize that like he would have had, support in a community, even like if everyone in his town was like fuck that guy, like he would have been, accepted somewhere else. It's like they don't it's like I think I always think these people is using a lot of this stuff as a cudgel just to torture people that they don't like. But like there was no reason for anyone to be attacking this like random small town mayor and blasting it all over the internet. And I don't think there's really like unless there's a public interest, stay out of people's fucking business, including their business on the internet. Like,
Yeah. And unfortunately, it does remind me of, and I've mentioned this before, the
mhm.
movie Soap Dish, where the villain, the resolution is to reveal that the villain, the clear villain of the movie, is a trans woman, and
Yeah,
she's revealed as such on national television, and the focus is more on how humiliating this is for the character played by Robert Downey Jr. His sexual humiliation because
yeah,
he's been interested in the trans woman. Oh my god! As opposed to the fact that this woman has been outed against her will on no matter how terrible she is on national television. But that's literally how it ends, and we don't see what happens afterward, where maybe
yeah.
this person took their own life or something, because it's quite a traumatic thing to have that sort of taken away from you, or to find that people to do this for sport is somewhat petty and limited political power, right? Little limited political impact to take this guy out, I assume.
I mean, it was just like literally the cruelty is the point. Like, hey, I like basically a child in like a middle schooler just torturing someone because I think that they're weird. And that is literally the entire reason for running this article. And the guy was on Twitter all week, like defending this article and saying like he's doing real journalism, and it's not real journalism. Like, there's no reason for anyone to know that at all. Like, they're just like there was no reason. It was just pure cruelty. And it's not just us they're doing it to, they do it to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
They just have a weird amount of hate in their hearts. you know I don't know what this guy's non-evil motivation or positive motivation could be. Maybe he is just a deeply insecure no-neck asshole who thinks
um
that that's how he I well I think a lot of people learned when they were younger that like one way for them to be cool is by, torturing someone else.
um so
And yeah.
Michael Mora, our colleague, might recognize this. So on the Incredible Hulk TV series, there was the journalist pursuing the Hulk, who has his own problems, right? Like Bill Bixby has his own issues trying to but he's pursued by this journalist who believes that if he breaks his story, fame and fortune will follow. And look, I mean, I don't know. I guess if he found
Maybe
a real
journalism
Bigfoot,
was journalism different back then? No.
apparently he could. There was budgets for him to travel around the country looking for and finally to capture the Hulk and prove the Hulk exists, and then fame and fortune would follow. Um, and that was eventually turned. There was sort of an origin episode for him that sort of showed a more positive, because it's not just the fame and fortune, because that's never compelling enough. It was sort
Yeah.
of he would get respect for his Hulk expose, and also that he would finally be able to write in the big leagues and that sort of stuff, and just sort of his own personal fulfillment in a way that is um, relatable. But yeah, you shouldn't destroy another life for that purpose. Um, and so I think there are a lot of journalists who sort of not bad journalists, but bad people who think that breaking this. I mean, everyone who pursued Princess Diana to her death,
Yeah.
the people who tortured, Meghan Markle and other, they believe
And
that
Britney Spears. Like,
yeah,
really, like
there's tons of this is this will get me
mhm,
fame and fortune. Craig Ferguson, who used to be a talk show host, I think
mhm.
I really admired how he very early on was like, I'm not making Britney Spears jokes. I'm not even making Charlie Sheen jokes. Like, this is not, these are people going through a crisis. This isn't funny. This isn't
Yeah.
fodder. And I think he's someone who stands out if you look at the late night host of that period, who they made a quick buck after stuff that really humiliated people
Yeah.
and is painful. I think we can often look and justify it to ourselves by saying that any celebrity. Oh, you're a celebrity. You're famous. You have all of this stuff. So
Mhm.
you and I making fun at the beauty salon or at home, whatever, over your wardrobe malfunction or whatever humiliating thing is fine for us. You've got millions. And instead, like, no, people do suffer serious depression over these things. And yes,
Yeah.
they're rich and they're might be movie stars or whatever, but what are you helping? What's the good in that?
You
It's not a
know, I mean, I
positive
can
thing.
say, like, when I was younger, I made, certain mistakes that I don't think I would have made now. I think, um, weirdly, one of my biggest regrets is, when no one is do you guys know who Amanda Bynes is? Like, okay,
Yes.
so Amanda Bynes is this, she was a child actress. She was on this show, all that, was on Snick, and we watched it every week, because we didn't have like social lives, because we were children. Um, and my sister actually like loved this girl when I found her a little annoying, but I also found like most child actors annoying. Not Kel because he was dishy, but other child actors. Um, and she had this like horrible breakdown a few years ago. And that's when I was working at this other site, Death and Taxes. And sometimes they'd make me do celebrity gossip stuff because I was the girl, because that's, the way things were. And I did a couple like snarky articles about it before like I really understood what was going like fully what was going on. And I talked to my sister and she was like, "This girl's having like a legitimate breakdown.
Mhm.
Maybe this should not be like a hilarious news story." And it's like I think especially then because it like the whole celebrity gossip thing was a much different animal than it is now. And you know, like I was probably a lot snarkier and this is
Yeah.
true. She was great in Hairspray. Um,
Amanda Bynes is incredibly talented,
yes.
and
And
she her story is particularly tragic for anyone who knows anyone who suffered
mhm,
from bipolar issues, right?
mhm,
Because it often strikes um, in late teens, early 20s.
mhm.
And to put that in perspective, especially for her, this when she was getting into her fame and whatever. For many non-celebrities, for women, it's like it's that person who's like going to college, kicking ass, doing everything, and
Yeah.
collapses, or it kind of cruelly hits at a time where it seems as if for your family, it's like what's happening to Robin, to our loved one who's everything's seemed yes last year was like rocketing ahead
Mhm.
and now is really behaving strangely. So that was kind of tragic to watch. And, it was a lot of potential, but it's true
Yeah.
for everyone. But I think, yes, that was unfortunate. People were kind of having fun, especially because she was on Twitter during some of it. And
Mhm.
like,
And we're
people
like,
are
"Whoa,
sharing.
this is crazy." But then like I will say that I feel like it did switch like very quickly where people were like, "Oh no, we're being huge assholes," or at least like that's sort of like what I realized. And I think that people are more thoughtful now about whether or not things are exploitative in that way and whether or not we're being shitty people. I like to think that we weirdly enough maybe didn't learn from Princess Diana, but I think that we all actually did learn from the Britney Spears shit. That like wow, that was genuinely terrible and it was generally like genuinely not okay. And I think that there was a time on the internet where it was like, if anything is, strange or weird, we should totally report on it because it'll be interesting and we'll get clicks and blah, blah, blah. Not that anyone ever, I only got paid for clicks on one site ever. It was barely a thing. Um, you know, and I think that for a while, like, people were sort of jaded and there was not this like empathy that I think that there is now. Um, in his article on it, Hamant Meta from Friendly Atheist actually like wrote something about uh, a particular Gawker article. It wasn't the Hulk Hogan one. I forget which one that ended up getting taken down because it was just like, oh, because it was just like about some like random guy who was like the brother of someone in the Obama administration. It was like a sex scandal. I don't even remember this. But like there was this idea for a while, I think, that everything is newsworthy. But like I think that people are starting to show, better judgment on the whole now. Or at least like I hope that they are. Most normal people. Um and I do feel like it's important to exercise that kind of judgment. This guy, he's very young and he's a conservative. Apparently, his name is Craig Munger. I believe his middle name is Haight. I used that joke yesterday, but he's a younger person who, according to what I saw, he was like raised by missionaries who are pieces of work themselves. I will not get into that, but I have a lot to say about missionaries and how they are terrible. But in communist China, and appears to have been like completely sheltered up until becoming a right wing frothing monster on this one site. And you know, I do hope that he is young enough to like learn the error of his ways. Perhaps he'll feel really bad that he killed someone, basically, because I don't even know how you live with that. And
Mhm.
sure, I'm probably being optimistic, and I usually am, but hey, everyone
Um,
changes and grows.
no, your hope is just like the Fisher King, which starts with the shock jock gets people killed
Yeah.
and feels remorse
Mhm.
for it, and
Yes.
that's where it
I
promotes
actually was
everything.
thinking of the Fisher King.
Um, one of my favorite movies.
Mhm.
It's one that really gets me, and to the point where I don't watch it a whole lot. Have you have films like that you enjoy,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
because you're
so
like, I
almost
have to like
effective?
wait a certain amount of time before I see it again because I still want stuff to be like, not necessarily like new again. I do that with shows too, like certain shows that it's gonna be a while before I can do another Buffy rewatch,
Um, but yeah, I'd want to let me. We were talking. We're going to talk about another terrible person, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But I'd like to end with that, so that because I'm going to talk about Democrats, and this way it'll seem like we're
See, I was gonna go.
it could
My
be a sandwich.
transition was gonna have to do with my eyeshadow, Stephen. I had
Your
a whole
your
plan.
your eyeshadow will still be
We'll get
around.
back to my eyeshadow later. So yeah, do,
So
yeah.
uh, this week there was a vote to expel George Santos. It failed. 31 Democrats voted to keep him in office. And one of the arguments from Jamie Raskin and physical others was that he hasn't yet been convicted of anything, because apparently the standards for employment in the House are higher than working at Jimmy John's. And what's really frustrating is beyond his many indictments for fraud and for all sorts of stuff, George Santos has been exposed now almost a year as an inveterate liar who defrauded his constituent. Like, it was very clear he lied about everything. That alone, it is not up for debate. So he should have been expelled. That is
Mhm.
my opinion. But larger to that point, Santos wrote a thank you note to everyone who voted to keep him in the
Well,
House.
that's good manners. That's just good manners. I'm pro thank you note.
That was very polite. But then Jamie Raskin marked it up and kind of publicly called out like the grammar errors and style errors. And a lot of, I call them blue MAGA types, like Democratic types, were like, "Oh, that's awesome! What a sick burn!" And I'm just like, I don't. I'm just a guy who maybe I exist too much in the world of media, but it's just sort of I often look at the world of like, okay, this action you did, has that ever been repeated in media by anyone who wasn't a jerk? Like, was
Yeah.
that ever like that's always and I
It's
feel
the
like,
asshole thing to do.
yeah,
Like it's just it is
publicly, especially,
classic asshole move.
it's one thing. So again, like in the movie, for the person who's like the
Mhm.
freshman, stopping someone from humiliating themselves is so
Mhm.
if I see
Yeah.
you've got like toilet paper on your heel and
Yeah, spinach in
and
your
I
teeth.
rush, grab you, finish, it's like
Mhm.
because my goal is to keep you from humiliating yourself. Like the idea is like, oh my god, she made a typo and it's on her PowerPoint. She's about to make this big thing. And the whole thing is, I'm rushing to stop you, establishes me as a good person, even if I don't like you
Yeah.
otherwise. That's the sort of pet the dog moment or whatever in the film. But um doing it to where publicly call out you for humiliation, even if you're a bad person, makes me look terrible. It just doesn't,
Mhm.
like, humiliating other people rarely, um and I don't get that.
Especially in that way. I don't know. There is a whole subsection of people that I feel like they're dwindling at this point, I will say. But there are a lot of people who are very much into this whole I'm a grammar Nazi. Blah, like I am and they thought it was like this really cool thing to be. And they thought it was like really cool and awesome of them to correct people's typos on Facebook for no reason when there was they weren't doing anything jerky even. Like, I'm a big fan of the let someone go on in like a big rage and then just be like, you have something on your face, like right there.
Mhm.
And like that I'm here for. Or if someone's being a crazy, is being like a rage monster, like, bringing up some weird small mistake like that to sort of just say like nothing that you just said is important. That's a different shtick. And I'm a big fan of that.
um
Um,
can I just address this? The ethics committee, oh my god, that ethics committee, we don't need this committee. They have to issue a report for the fact that George Santos did not actually produce Spider-Man Wait Wait Until Dark or whatever, or that he did not his mother was not murdered on 9/11. Like, these things last year, I covered all this. They are known lies. Known. So
yeah.
forget his actual indictments. These are known. He did not attend college where he says he did not work where he these are all known lies. And they have to be this whole ethics investigation. He has no ethics. It's clear.
Yeah.
And the idea that this helps, that there's any sort of political benefit, there's not, because the idea that it makes Republicans look bad, it doesn't. And arguably, Republicans moving to get rid of him and Democrats saving him with then some BS stuff about the Constitution that Raskin said doesn't help. Now Republicans can say, we tried to get rid of this guy, Democrats kept him, and only so they can try to win the seat at a more, I guess, beneficial time for them. I think it's better to try to flip the seat now, because you can focus on that
Mhm.
one race. Um, and the fact he just shouldn't be in the Congress. Like, just, this guy is a scum and should be removed. Um, I think when I read Raskin's explanation, and I saw this from others, there was a consistent thing of, you could tell it's like, oh my God, the precedent, because he hasn't yet been convicted. We have to have a high precedent because he hasn't yet been convicted. Having the ethics committee, and you could tell this is sort of to try to protect potentially their own members. Oh no, because
Mhm.
now that'll keep Republicans from expelling Rashida Tlaib or others. No, if they have the votes, they will get rid of, like, none of this precedent. I think Democrats still think that Republicans care about consistency or anything. It's only
Yeah.
about
Oh,
power.
yeah. No, they don't care about consistency because this is the thing. We don't live in a world that actually cares that much about consistency. Um, or playing by the rules. Like it's not really a thing that people care about like you like, this is a really bitchy thing to say, but you really only care about the rules, especially arbitrary ones, that aren't, fat, like hurting, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're losing, like that's what, I mean, depending on certain things, like the Geneva Conventions, those are good rules for everyone. Like don't torture people, but
Oh, that's very nice to invite me. I'm actually seeing Captain Marvel, and perhaps it's only me and my friend who are seeing that. It's not particularly, um, the pre-sales are abysmal, which I don't know.
it's weird that why is one of them named Captain Marvel? Like, isn't that a little I mean, again, forgive my ignorance on this, but isn't that a little meta? It feels meta. Because isn't
Um,
Marvel the name of the comics?
well, she was a captain in the military, and um, Marvel. Marvell was, I think, her. Wow, it can vary in the comics, but there's an explanation beyond the meta for why she's captain. And of course, Captain Marvel for me is an entirely different character. It's the character people erroneously call Shazam now, but I am old enough and crotchety enough to refer to them as Captain Marvel. Also, this is also some news. The Portland public schools are on strike, and my life is in a complete state of,
Oh yeah.
or then it's been, my son is union strong, but I don't know if he's supporting the teachers just striking just because there's no school and he sleeps late, or he has articulated the teachers' concerns in a. I've been impressed by how able he's been able to kind of break down what their concerns are and how he thinks that they're reasonable, and they are. So, Portland School District, come on, get it together. But I fear that
Take
this
care of
is
those
going to
teachers.
be.
Also, I haven't seen your son's Halloween costume yet, so you're going to need to send that to me.
Oh
We've
yes,
been ships passing in the night this week, I believe. But
I will. There's a family photo. I so,
are you dressed up?
yes, he had a costume for me. He does every year. So, but yes, only Robin will see this. So
Yeah.
anyway, um but yes, making fun of people's grammar, making fun of Donald Trump for eating steaks well done, and then wondering why you're not doing well with white working class voters in rural parts of the country. I don't know. Just think about this. I like who are you? Who are you impressing? Same with like making fun of people's weight,
Yeah.
which
Which
is a
I
bit.
mean, is like my thing. Like it's not cute. It doesn't make you look good. It makes you look like an asshole. Like I promise you.
Well, it's also, as I think we've discussed this, there's a sort of class bias to this where
Mhm,
when there were polls about Biden's health,
mhm.
potentially being senile and whatever, and everyone would respond with, "But he's on the bike. He's thin, and on that bike, he's thin. He's on the bike, and Trump is fat, eats Big Macs, and have a heart attack." And it's just, you know, I guarantee you, if you go to some parts of the country, in rural parts of the country, Trump to them seems like a guy who's in better shape than they view thin as potentially frail because they perhaps do not have certain people do not have that obsession with
Well, that's also
getting.
why people get filler when they get older. Like when you are older, like having like a little bit more weight on your face looks healthier.
Yes,
Um,
it is, you but the final by thing, because I'm writing about this. There is a latest poll out from New York Times that Trump is leading in pretty much every battleground state necessary to win. And what's interesting is that people either respond to the fact that they don't believe in polls anymore, which back in 2019, when Biden was ahead of a lot of polls, people did
yeah.
believe in polls. That was why you're supposed to vote for Biden instead of, say, Liz
Oh,
Warren and
and
others.
pre that even, like the Donald Trump era, everyone was like, "Oh my God, we love polls, and we're all in love with Nate Silver," and then we all hated Nate Silver forever and ever. Like,
And also, like, I get many things. Also, if you write about the polls, it will cause the polls to get worse, even though I don't believe in the polls, and the polls are
mhm,
ridiculous.
yeah.
But something I was focusing on is Charlotte
If they're
Clymer.
more sorry, how are they people more superstitious than I am? Jesus.
Yes, I
Like,
have I have limited patience for superstition. My Vulcan mind just can't accept it. Even though
Halloween is festive.
I criticize people who believe that voters are Vulcans. Voters tend to be people who vote with their emotions, and you need to
Mhm.
recognize that. But Charlotte Clymer, the a Democratic activist, was sort of, I firmly believe Biden and Harris are going to be overwhelmingly reelected. These polls are all BS, whatever. And it just sounds like a climate denier. Because it's not just that I disagree with the data, it is that the data is part of some conspiracy. This is just those of us in
Yeah.
the media are bored, and it's too boring to write about the fact that Biden and Harris are brilliant and perfect, and so we want a horse race. We want Trump back. There's the idea that the media wants Trump back, And look, I don't want to get into all of that. The thing is, like, I mean, if you're not looking at the world and looking at this data, real like that's scary. And to me, the Washington Post had an article about what Trump is planning if he gets reelected, his Jedi purges and whatever. And I don't know why. I feel like, and this is gonna might insult some folks, but neither Biden nor Harris or Barack Obama or even Bill Clinton in 1992. This was not a movement. This was people were driven to the polls because they were scared the fuck of Donald Trump, and that they were wanted to get rid of him. And I think you need to, if you want to draw out the right people, you need to really focus on the fact that it is very real. The worst case scenario can happen. Trump can win.
Mhm.
Because I think there's almost a sense of we don't want to concede that Trump could win, and we actually want you, and you've called it the like eating your peas type thing. We want you to vote for Biden and Harris because it's just the right thing to do, and you're a morally terrible person if you don't. We won't even concede. We won't go to the fact that your life will literally end, or that Fannie Willis and Jack Smith are going to be in root like destroyed if Trump gets into power. Like focusing on that is apparently is wrong and scary, and we're just going to ignore the polls,
Yeah.
which seems
Like,
not wise.
no, it's generally a pretty bad idea. Um, like, no, you shouldn't like live and die by the polls, but like pretending that like the polls are like some kind of like weird vengeance game against you. And also, I don't like I certainly have a lot of my disagreements, especially currently, which I'm not going to discuss here, but you know, if we actually want these people to win, it is a better plan to focus on so, like stuff that they do that is good, other than like, well, if you don't vote for them, then you're a bad person. And people will get very, very touchy and mad when they're like, well, why isn't it'll be the end of democracy a good like that should be
Yeah.
a good
Well,
that should be all that
yeah.
people need. They shouldn't need any more than that. And I'm like, no, they actually kind of do, because not that it's just not it's
Um,
not how anything works. It's not how humans work. Like you can't just be like, oh, people.
Obama had polling dips. He was also a far better, let's be blunt, far better candidate than Biden. And it didn't just happen. So it's sort of like how you talk about, well, Muhammad Ali beat uh, George Foreman. So anyone who is 10 years older and significantly smaller than can win. Like, so I go and fight George Foreman. No, I'm gonna get killed. Like, so it's not just the fact that this happened, it is the fact of how did he do it? How did he outwit? And so Obama benefited from, one, having rock solid support. That support especially among people of color and the people who came out to them despite what the polls revealed, whereas it's much weaker with Biden. Those folks might very well not come out for him in certain ways. He's just not. He doesn't connect with
Yeah.
those voters the same way. And also,
Well, he's
Romney
gonna have a
was
real hard
someone.
time winning Michigan. Like, really, I'm not gonna explain why,
Yeah.
but he's gonna have a real and like we need Michigan and some other states, and we're making that difficult. You know, the thing is though, like being pedantic and being condescending is not like across the board, it is not as appealing as people think it is. Like
Yeah.
it just isn't. And I'm like begging people
Well.
on
Yeah.
my knees, like, please stop thinking that that is attractive. Please stop thinking that, like, just saying, like, oh, well, you should just go and do this and shut up. Or, on the other hand, saying, like, oh, well, we don't need the entire left to win because we're going to have all these centrist Republicans now. And, like,
That's
you
and
know,
they're the ones who are bailing. So that's the challenge and the difference between 2012 and now is that the coalition is at different purposes. You had like Obama's coalition was Obama's coalition. This
mhm,
coalition was always one of where if it's not Trump or if someone's like, okay, well, Trump might drop dead, it'll be Nikki Haley who will become president, and maybe I can get away with voting. Like that was always going to be a risk.
Mhm.
And so there's this. So I do believe there are the folks that you do have to scare about Trump, like some of the younger
Yeah.
people who are not on board with him or for whatever reason. Look, he's not cool. Admit it. And I know it sucks that you want him to be as cool as Obama. You want people to vote for him like he's Obama. You want that for same with Harris, but get over yourself and just all right, scare young people, scare people who want their bodily autonomy, make them realize how real the threat of Trump is. And then there's the people who don't really care about that. Their lives aren't going to be at risk if Trump becomes president again. They're predominantly right-leaning white male, but they voted for Biden in those key states. You need to appeal to them on here's what Biden has done for you, it's not so
Mhm.
bad, like really sell it. And the one of the guys from Podcast America, and I've linked to that in my piece for tomorrow, has broken down how you can do it. There's ways to do it. What concerns me, and I think some of the comments have said this, is sort of that if you point out that Biden's polling numbers are bad, you're like, well, we can't replace him. Which reminds me of an old theater thing where if the play wasn't going well, you would suddenly say, okay, well, if we can't turn this around, we're just going to ditch everything and start doing a Tempest. And
Or
which
turn
is
it into a
absurd.
musical. Sorry.
Yeah, like it's absurd. You can't actually do that. Similar to as much as I love who all murders in the building, turning something into a musical is not. It's actually not that easy. But
Although again, we would still like that to be a real
yeah.
musical that we can go and watch.
um. So we're not saying that he needs to be replaced. We're saying that this is the guy. He's the guy running, and his numbers are terrible. He is losing. We need to recognize that and then do whatever's necessary to fix it. But pretending there isn't a problem is not successful, I believe. And you know there's a problem when people are always preparing who to blame for it. So the folks is like it's
Mhm.
so I'm already saying Biden will definitely win, but if he doesn't, it's it's mostly people like you, Robin. So it's they are not, you said something mean about Biden online, or Saturday Night Live made fun of him, and so now he's going to lose. It's because of Saturday Night Live. So this type of stuff
See,
is
the thing
not.
is, if you have a sense of humor about yourself, that goes over well. Like, and it doesn't actually hurt you, is the thing. Like, just being like so like uptight and like, and I get that like people are like, it's an end of the world type emergency, but also like don't do stuff that is actually like counter to your like helpful to your cause. Like, also like I realize that a lot of people think that, saying really shitty things about the left is like, oh my god, this is a winning issue for us, and it's really not. Like I know that a lot of you hate us, like it's like but like, I don't sit around all day being like, oh hey, who I really hate is like, I mean, I don't care much for Sanders. I don't really care much for like, more establishment types, but I'm not like, and they're like dooming the world in that way. Because, I'm not a Trotskyite, as I was explaining what Trotskyites are earlier this week. Like, um, I don't know why I don't,
I think this goes back to my theater
oh yeah,
art. Like
I'm like,
it's sort of like
I am
we're
so done with John Fetterman, like
but you and I are
awfulness forever.
you and I have produced a play. It's not coming together well. It's about to open, and I was like, okay, well, our lead, we need to do something because the lead is not kind of gelling with and the idea is that suddenly, okay, well, then who's going to be then? Well, this random person or this random, like, okay,
Yeah.
I no, it's we're a week out. We're about to
Well,
open.
just like, try and make it better.
We need to try. We can't like, and that's a sort of, but it is this form of coping that's not particularly helpful. So it's the idea of like, okay, well, yes, I get it. This is the show we have. This is the cast we have. It's not coming together. I think we need to do what we can to make it better. And even acknowledging that does not mean that, well, I'm not suggesting we start over from scratch because we can't. And that might not even be the issue. We just need to at least. So I think that's part of the challenge. People won't accept. maybe because they feel like there is no hope. I don't believe that's the case. I believe there is hope. We just need to actually, I don't know, not exist in a world where you believe that this is things aren't going poorly.
I'm going to address something real quick. Clearly, we do, or else you wouldn't be mad at us for not voting for Democrats. Like, clearly, we have a certain amount of voting power, and there are more of us than ever. Like, there are way more of us than there were during the Clinton era. And so we actually do have a lot of power, and we actually do have a lot of success because guess what? We're always prematurely correct. Everything that we say, because, like, later on, all the Democrats end up saying it themselves and feeling embarrassed that they did not, and having to explain why they didn't believe that all along.
Mhm.
So,
I'm writing something for
yeah.
tomorrow
So,
about how centrists were so in love with Eric Adams. Like even from the start, was like from the Bulwark to New York Magazine, particularly centrist, where it was like he's the future of the Democratic Party. And if you
mhm,
looked at all that they got excited about, was that he was trash talking progressives and putting progressives in their place. That was what they
mhm,
found as exciting. But if you dug deeper, it was clear he was not a great candidate and he was going to have problems. And of course, he's has tons of scandals. He'll be lucky to
yeah.
serve 2 terms. He might even get successfully primaried out of office the next when his first term ends. And what was interesting is that um, there was an article around the same time that Adams won that when Raphael Warnock
Mhm,
won, and it was like, okay, well, don't go crazy. This doesn't mean that Georgia's turned purple. It's just that Trump cost them the election. It wasn't Warnock. It wasn't Warnock. He's not the future of the party or anything because he's not even like Alexandra Ocasio Cortez type liberal. He is,
mhm,
but he's a liberal who doesn't trash talk the left. So they found that they were far more likely to jump. If you look at, and I've always warned that, look, be allies. If we have, we're all trying to build a coalition, but be wary of the folks who like you when you're putting down your own folks or who likes the candidate who puts down their own folks because that's just all they want is someone who trash talks others. They don't really support you. And yes, I mean the thing with the left is sort of Biden's losing. He's losing right now in the poll, if you believe in polls. Uh, Double haters, so people who hate both
yeah.
potential nominees. Trump beat Clinton amongst the double haters by 17 points in 2016. Biden carried double haters by 7 points, and Trump is ahead by 3 points this time. Double haters are actually not the left. They're again right leaning people. They're the soccer mom, the quote unquote soccer moms, and
Swing voters, yeah.
yeah. And but inevitably, even though if you think about it, so much effort has been to keeping these folks happy and to speaking to those people, that if Biden loses, it's going to be about who is the scapegoat. And the scapegoat is always going to be the left or of young people. We told you young people don't
Yeah.
turn out. We told you the left is upset about this issue and didn't turn out. And to your point, yes, the idea is like, okay, the left has no power. Well, if they don't, then why do you get upset? Why do you care if they vote or not?
Yeah.
Like you made your choice, you're pushing towards a certain group. And if they're not coming out for you, I mean, these are polls are not just about young people, it's about the voters. This is about who you've been trying to appeal to.
Mhm. And, like, you just can't keep going like, well, this group doesn't matter. Well, this group doesn't matter. So now, like, it's like the left doesn't matter. Muslims don't matter. Like, those votes are unnecessary. We don't need those anymore. We don't need young people. Like, who is left? Like, yes, there are a very good amount in the world of, like, kind of square, like Gen X and above, voting adults. But, like,
Um,
uh,
well, and I promise to end this on a more
yeah.
positive note. So, can we segue to your smoky eye, Robin?
Well, okay. I will tell you that I kind of forgot that we were doing the Wicked thing, and I did a whole brick red smoky eye for today. And then the reason I was a little bit late is because I was like, oh shit, we're doing the Wicked thing. And so I transitioned to a green and gold smoky eye. And I am actually good at doing a smoky eye. But you know who is not actually any good at all at doing a smoky eye? Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's terrible at it. And the thing about her is that like it's kind of just impressively she's just become impressively bad and impressively villainous. And I think part of the problem is like, we can't really find much of a positive motivation for her because everything she does is also so stupid.
Yeah.
Like it
No.
doesn't seem like she actually has an agenda. And this week
Uh,
yeah.
well, sorry to interrupt, but do you think the fact that I'm sorry, I'm just speaking from a television standpoint. There was a TV show called Ugly Betty, and even though
Which I love. Yeah.
obviously played by the beautiful in every possible way America Ferrera, but she was played, but that was meant to
We have
be right.
braces and glasses. That's how we
We
know people are unattractive.
so so forgive me for not being very gallant here, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders is not particularly a conventionally attractive person. And do you think that is a sort of sense of her? It's tough to
Well,
exist
I will
in
say
the world
I
that
hate
way.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but I saw a tweet this week about her that pissed me the fuck off because it was simultaneously like fat phobic,
Mm,
sexist, and transphobic.
yeah.
Like it was like some stupid thing about like, oh, Caitlyn Jenner's gained some weight. Like I'm like, wow, I really like you are not helpful, whoever you are. And like this is the thing, like, no, like not everyone has to be that. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that she is a stupid person who doesn't know what she's doing
No, no,
and
no.
thinks that,
She's
like,
terrible. She's evil, but she's in a world where people treat her that like crap. And even she was able to gain some attention during when Michelle Wolf made a perfectly fine joke
yeah.
against her. People, she was able to kind of leverage that because she's someone who probably has, I would say, been bullied for her appearance. I'm not
Oh,
trying to be a jerk about it. And so maybe that's a way of people do, I don't feel sorry for her, but would identify with her as someone that people are gross to, especially among liberals. I see people making fun of sometimes
Yeah.
their stuff and her. I mean, I've been guilty of just being surprised by her outfits. I'm not
Okay,
trying
this
to
is the thing.
be.
Outfits are fair game. Outfits are always fair game because they are a choice.
Yes, and her choices, though
Like
someone
it's
has.
plaid florals a lot of the time and weird
Yeah,
box like
yeah.
I love a big shoulder, me. Like I'm
So
full on dynasty today, but like square shoulders. She keeps doing square shoulders and it's very bad. It's very boxy in like a not cute way and I love that. But so here's the thing. I don't be less
Wait,
bothered by like, also makeup. Makeup is fine to go for because people are, that is also aesthetics. Someone's actual face, their weight, anything like that, shut up about it forever. Never bring it up. It's not okay. Like it's never, never, never good. It never makes you look good. It always makes you look like a little bit of an asshole. But what really makes you look like an asshole is when you like refuse to give it like uh let someone off of out of prison when they have been proven to be clearly innocent and are like instead of like giving him amnesty and like letting him go, I am just gonna let him stay. We'll get back to that in 6 years. Like that is where I have like I think the podium thing, I think the spending money on trips thing, I
mhm,
think that's like a very like stupid person trying to be fancy,
yeah.
like which is why I made my Louis Vuitton podium that no one used in any of their articles, but it's still available.
They are
But
it's all goofy type stuff. It's all stuff you might see in Veep or whatever, like in politics where the person is recognized here. And I think Democrats do this as well. They focus on sometimes the absurd stuff that is sort of almost adorably absurd, like the wacky boss on a TV show. The wacky person might do this,
Mhm.
even the podium, even misuse. But like that's what bugged me about the Santos thing, because this is a guy who stole money intended for a homeless vet's dog. He's a cruel person. He's a bad person, and instead, it seems like Democrats are obsessed with focusing on him as being silly, like the comic aspects that are amusing, but humor is usually seen as positive. So you're not really selling the fact that he's a bad actor. You know, Huckabee Sanders is cruel. So to me, like how she dresses and all of that, yes, you should
Mhm.
focus on, as you say, she is cruel. Like someone
Yeah, she
is,
does objectively cruel things. And it sort of it actually really bothers me when people are like, making fun of the way that she looks rather than focusing on the fact that, she is letting an innocent person stay in prison, like a blatantly innocent person. Like no, there's just no question the like the another person confessed to the crime. The other, like, he's only in there because of paperwork, having not been filed at the exact right time, and it's like known that this guy is innocent, and she's like, no, no, get back to me in 6 years. And so, oh, hey, we can believe her polls, though, I bet, because she is the most unpopular governor in Arkansas in 20 years.
Mhm.
um but
um
it seems so fucking beside the point. Why do people think?
I'm sorry, I was just abused. Someone in the comments, I think it was Gary, had mentioned that the youth problem. VP Harris, who turns 60 next year, is working the college campuses. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about her age but politically, she does not necessarily have great youth appeal. That was not her strength, even in the primaries. And this weird thing of where, no, 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 she's your youth person is what it's like the parties insisted on this, even though there's no necessarily evidence of this. Whereas Republicans, like from Turning Point USA, their ability to kind of get, which is scary because fascism is a youth movement, that they're really sort of engaging young people. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, who's
Yeah.
relatively young despite being my age.
But she's like, this is the thing. Like like, I'm not saying like in defense of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but like she speaks on the issues that like terrible young people are into, and talks with their terrible people that are their leaders. Like, she was talking to the Groypers and shit like that. Like, that is appealing to them. I feel like Harris in general has positions that appeal to people who are a bit older. Like, um, you know, I know I know the left has no power, but most young people are actually more like on board with the things that I believe than the things that uh older Democrats
Yes.
believe, and that
Well, it would seem like
like,
AOC or others, no matter what you think of the politics, but young people who are actively on, who can do the TikTok or
yeah.
whatever, you would be sending out those people do exist. That should be your secret
Yeah.
weapon.
And,
And like this,
I'm
like
sorry, they're not like, FOSTA SESTA is a really big deal and people are still mad about it. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but people are still mad about it. Like, younger people are very pro sex worker, very like also anti-prosecutor. So like, she's gonna prosecute the like, no, that's like a very bad tack. Like, don't do that for any reason.
like
Like,
I know people get
we don't
upset. I
like
think it was
prosecutors, like,
yeah.
specifically dislike them.
Well, and people like, well, what about Bernie's youth appeal? And I get that he's much older than Harris, but he did
It's
deliver.
the
Like
opinions,
also like
and people
during
are
the
kind of mad at him right
primary,
now also, but
during both primaries, he did well with young voters. Like
yeah.
that, there was documented. He was so like that was never anything that Harris did. I don't think any of her speeches were like. So the
It's
idea that
not
she's
about physical age. It's about like the, opinions that you hold. Someone brought up Buttigieg. He appeals to, like, he doesn't have a lot of policies that appeal to younger, even though he is younger. He's not like,
well,
you know not he.
Well, yeah.
Whereas, like, Bernie had a lot, Warren had a lot, because people are very different. Like, people who grew up like post Gen X have very, very different politics than, there's a very, very big split,
Hmm.
primarily because, like, shit really sucked for us when we got out of college in a
Yeah.
very, like, it was very bad. And late capitalism has not worked out for us
Yeah.
at
I think
all. Like, it's been very bad.
I'd seen where, and I agree with this,
Like,
and I think Buttigieg is very good at this, but he's someone who um appeals to perhaps people a little bit older than I am and boomers specifically because he is kind of the son they wish their kids were like.
yeah, yeah.
And that's not trying
Well,
to be a
Wilson
jerk.
makes
It's just
fun
like
of users with his, like, cute dog and stuff like.
that is a strength. That is what you use. But I'm just very like and I don't mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, Gary. Like when, but I've seen this elsewhere. Like the idea of Harris as a youth turnout engine is to me scary. And if
Like, she looks young, she's pretty.
let me say for the sake of argument, if if Sanders had won the presidency and people, something people really don't like Nina Turner, for instance, but like say he had said, oh well, I know I'm doing poorly amongst Hillary Clinton supporters, women. Nina Turner is my secret weapon. We would all be like, that's not a good idea. Like she is not particularly popular with that demo. And so I was very
Mhm.
concerned of like, well, yeah, I don't see the evidence where Harris is particularly very popular with that demo. And it is, to your point, interesting because it's like you do get in the habit, I don't, but sometimes you think that you are still young. So it's like, oh yeah, like young people like this politician, but you look around, it's like, oh, it's actually folks in their 40s and above, not necessarily 18 to 25-year-olds or whatever. So, um, do you have anything mean to say about Sarah Huckabee Sanders again? So before we wind up, I don't
I
want
just
to.
generally kind of think that she is a sociopath. Like, but it's, I don't, this is like, there's always that, like, are they stupid or evil thing? And I told you, I don't believe in evil, but I think hers is primarily like just pure like absolute like simpleness. I think she's a very simple, like, like people you say simple minded. Like,
Mhm.
she's like, oh, my dad got in trouble for pardoning some folks, so I will never pardon anyone on the off chance that, they do something bad later on, even if they're innocent. Um, Although one thing that I will say about, like, speaking of that, and also prosecutors, there are a lot of people out there, and I've spoken to them. You don't, like, actually see a lot of, like, talking heads or whatever saying this, but I've spoken to a lot of not so civ people who will genuinely, like, with their full, like, heart say, like, look, the cops and the prosecutors, a lot of the time, like, they know these people are bad and they don't know how else to get them, so they have to do some prosecutorial misconduct, or they have to get them on a, thing where they didn't actually do, but they're actually bad people and they know that they're bad people. And it's just like, wow, that's some incredible magical thinking there. I
Um,
mean, they're, unfortunately, the way that they seem to know that they're bad people is that they are, usually people of color with, serious, like, especially like when you're talking about guys like this with, who are poor and who have, like, cognitive issues like this guy did. Like, that's how they know they're bad.
yes.
They get prosecutor vibes.
And finally, I guess this is probably meant as an
Yes.
insult. Fuckabee Slanders as thick as a brick and stone cold mean. But in my single days, I would have answered that personal
Was she a brick house?
thick as a brick and stone
Yes.
cold mean. I would have been
Yes.
very excited for the end of the
Yes.
workday. Um,
Wait, you're not old enough to have been in the disco era.
yeah. I
Well, that
I
feels very disco to me.
I grew up I grew up in a disco household.
I
So
also grew up in a disco household.
I certain expressions, certain things, and that's what
Yeah.
the music that
I
was
feel
being
like a
played in
weird
my
amount
house.
of, Michael. Oh, who's the guy that everyone's parents like? The yacht rock guy. Michael sang the song with Patti LaBelle.
Michael McDonald?
Yes, Michael McDonald. That, and also so much Anita Baker.
Uh,
Though that is parent music legally.
so thanks everyone for this actually wound up more less chaotic than I thought it would be. It's actually somewhat streamlined.
Yeah, no, I felt like we were very, like, we wove everything in, including my, eye makeup choices, which again are better than Sarah Huckabee Sanders's.
Uh,
Someday, if we really want to get views, I'll do my eye makeup while we do this, and we'll talk in the ASMR voice.
that'd be great. You
Yes.
you could even do an apartment tour and tell us where you sourced everything. Um, so
Do
the
unboxing of I don't know what. Just open boxes. They'll be empty.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Bye.